Two signs someone is thinking about you more than you realize begins to make sense the moment you stop scrolling and actually feel why you're here. This isn't just another idea passing through your day. Something pulled your attention to these words, and that pull itself is part of the message. When someone is thinking about you more than you realize, it doesn't always show up in obvious ways. It doesn't always arrive as a message or a call. Most of the time, it arrives quietly, through moments that feel small but carry an emotional weight you can't fully explain. There are connections in life that don't disappear just because people stop talking. Thoughts have energy. Emotions have direction. And when someone's mind keeps returning to you, especially with feeling attached to it, that focus creates a subtle bridge. You don't have to believe in anything mystical to understand this. You've felt it before. That strange awareness. That moment when someone enters your thoughts without being invited. That's where the first sign begins. The first sign is sudden, unplanned awareness. You're going about your day, doing something ordinary, and out of nowhere, a specific person appears in your mind. Not because something reminded you of them. Not because you were missing them. It just happens. Their face. Their voice. A memory that doesn't feel forced. This kind of thought feels different from normal thinking. It interrupts you rather than flowing from you. What makes this important is the timing. These thoughts often show up when your mind is calm or focused on something else. There's no emotional trigger on your end. And yet, there they are. This happens because when someone thinks about you repeatedly, especially with emotion, that focused attention creates a pull. If there is any kind of bond between you, your awareness becomes the place where that energy lands. Many people dismiss this as coincidence. But coincidences don't repeat with consistency. Patterns do. If the same person keeps appearing in your thoughts across different days, different moods, and different moments, something deeper is happening. It's not obsession. It's not imagination. It's awareness responding to attention. When someone thinks about you more than they realize, they replay moments. Conversations. Things they wish they had said. Things they didn't understand at the time. Each time they do this, emotion is attached to the thought. Emotion gives thoughts weight. And weight creates movement. That movement doesn't stay contained. It looks for resonance. That's why these thoughts of them feel different from random memories. They linger. They feel charged. They ask to be noticed. Sometimes they come with a slight emotional shift. Sometimes they don't. But there's always a sense of recognition, like the thought didn't start with you. The second sign shows up not in your thoughts, but in your emotional state. This is where people get confused, because emotions are easy to explain away. You might suddenly feel calm for no reason. Or slightly heavy. Or unusually reflective. Nothing in your environment explains it, but the feeling is real. This emotional shift is one of the clearest signs that someone is thinking about you deeply. When someone thinks about you during moments of vulnerability, their emotions are stronger. Late at night. During quiet moments. After something meaningful happens in their life. That's when thoughts carry the most energy. And if you share any kind of connection with them, you may feel the echo of that emotion without knowing why. This doesn't feel dramatic. It feels subtle. like a wave passing through you and then moving on. You might feel the urge to pause, to breathe, to reflect. Not because something is wrong, but because something touched your inner world briefly. That's emotional resonance. These emotional shifts don't demand action. They don't come with instructions. They simply arrive and fade. That's because they're not meant to disrupt your life. They're meant to signal awareness. To remind you that someone's attention is focused on you, even if nothing has been spoken. What's important to understand is that this kind of connection doesn't depend on proximity or communication. Distance doesn't weaken it. Silence doesn't erase it. In many cases, distance makes thoughts stronger. When people are apart, they think more. They reflect more. They feel more clearly. And if there is something unresolved between you, thinking about you becomes their way of staying connected without reaching out. You might notice these emotional shifts happening at similar times. Late evenings. Early mornings. Quiet moments. That's not random. Those are the moments when people are most honest with themselves. When distractions fall away. When thoughts become real. Most people wait for obvious signs. A text. A call. A name spoken out loud. But those are not the first signals. Energy moves before action. Thought travels before words. Emotion arrives before communication. By the time someone reaches out, they've often been thinking about you for a long time already. If you've experienced sudden thoughts of someone without reason and emotional shifts without cause, you're not imagining it. Someone is thinking about you more than you realize. Not casually. Not briefly. But with intention and feeling. This doesn't mean you're required to do anything with this awareness. It's not pressure. It's information. The universe often shows you what's happening behind the scenes before it reveals the outcome. Awareness always comes first. As you move forward, notice these moments without overthinking them. Let them exist without expectation. Connection doesn't always demand action. Sometimes it simply asks to be acknowledged. If this spoke to you in any way, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more messages like this. Sometimes the right words find us exactly when we're meant to hear them. There is something important to understand as you continue listening to this, something most people never slow down enough to notice. When someone is thinking about you consistently, the connection doesn't stay limited to thoughts and emotions. It starts influencing timing, coincidence, and awareness in subtle ways. This is where the signs move beyond the internal world and begin showing up around you, quietly shaping moments that feel too specific to ignore. You may notice that reminders of this person start appearing without effort. Their name comes up in conversations you weren't expecting. A song connected to them plays at the exact moment you were already thinking about them. A place, a phrase, or even a random object pulls them into your awareness again. These moments feel small, but they carry a strange precision. They arrive when your mind is open, not distracted, almost as if something is nudging you to notice. This happens because focused attention creates momentum. When someone thinks about you often, especially with emotion, that energy doesn't just circulate inside them. It seeks alignment. And alignment often shows up as repetition in your environment. The universe uses repetition to get attention, not force. It places familiar symbols in your path until awareness clicks into place. You might try to explain these moments logically. You might tell yourself you're just noticing things more. But the truth is, awareness sharpens when there is connection. You don't suddenly notice everything. You notice what's relevant. And relevance is created by energy moving between 2 points. At the same time, you may feel a subtle pull toward stillness. Moments where you pause longer than usual. Where you reflect without knowing why. This isn't distraction. This is sensitivity. When someone is thinking about you deeply, your intuition becomes more alert. It listens more closely. It creates space. What's interesting is that this awareness doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't create panic or anxiety. It feels calm, observant, almost neutral. That's how you know it's intuition, not imagination. Imagination rushes. Intuition waits. Another sign that often appears during this phase is a shift in how you remember the person. Memories soften. The emotional charge changes. Instead of sharp reactions, there's understanding. Instead of confusion, there's clarity. This doesn't happen because time passed. It happens because the connection itself is changing. When someone thinks about you repeatedly, they revisit memories with new perspective. And as they reinterpret those moments, the emotional tone attached to them shifts. You feel that shift too. Suddenly, things make more sense. Situations that once felt unresolved no longer feel heavy. This is energetic resolution beginning before physical conversation. You might also notice that your dreams become more vivid or symbolic. Not necessarily about them directly, but about themes of closure, connection, or clarity. Dreams are where the mind processes what the conscious self hasn't fully acknowledged yet. When someone is thinking about you strongly, that energy often finds its way into the subconscious first. This doesn't mean every dream is a message. It means your inner world is responding to something external. And that response often comes through images and feelings rather than words. Another subtle sign appears in your sense of timing. You may feel that something is approaching, without knowing what. Not anticipation, but readiness. This is important. Readiness is different from waiting. Waiting feels restless. Readiness feels grounded. When someone is thinking about you more than you realize, the universe often aligns both people into readiness at the same time. Not to rush interaction, but to prevent imbalance. Connection works best when both sides are emotionally prepared to receive it. You may notice that your reactions to other people change during this time. You become less interested in shallow interactions. Less reactive to things that once bothered you. This is because your energy is reorganizing. It's prioritizing depth over distraction. Meanwhile, the person thinking about you is likely experiencing a similar shift. They may not be fully aware of it, but something in them is recalibrating. Their thoughts are slowing down. Their emotions are becoming clearer. And you're part of that clarity. This is why forcing communication during this phase often feels wrong. The connection isn't ready for action yet. It's still aligning. Pushing it too soon disrupts the natural flow. The universe prefers balance over speed. You may also experience moments of sudden gratitude, even without a clear reason. Gratitude is a sign of alignment. It means your nervous system feels safe. And safety is required for meaningful connection. When someone is thinking about you with sincerity, not obsession or fear, that energy feels safe. It doesn't disturb your peace. It supports it. There is a difference between someone thinking about you out of attachment and someone thinking about you out of clarity. Attachment creates tension. Clarity creates calm. What you're feeling now matters. If the signs you're noticing feel gentle rather than intense, that's a good thing. It means the connection is rooted in awareness, not urgency. And awareness lasts longer. You may still doubt this at times. Doubt doesn't cancel intuition. It simply means your mind is trying to catch up to what your inner awareness already knows. Let doubt exist without letting it control the narrative. Not every connection is meant to turn into immediate action. Some are meant to bring understanding. Some are meant to bring closure. Some are meant to reopen conversations when both sides are ready to listen rather than defend. Right now, the signs point to awareness growing on both sides. Someone is thinking about you more than you realize, and that attention is reshaping how both of you perceive the connection. You don't need to label it. You don't need to interpret every sign. Simply noticing is enough. Awareness changes things on its own. As you move through your days, stay present. Stay grounded. Let moments speak for themselves without forcing meaning onto them. If communication is meant to happen, it will arise naturally from clarity, not confusion. Connection doesn't always begin with words. Sometimes it begins with awareness quietly returning where it never truly left. As this awareness deepens, something else begins to unfold that many people overlook because it doesn't announce itself clearly. When someone is thinking about you more than you realize, their inner world starts reorganizing around that focus, and the effects of that reorganization ripple outward. You may not hear from them yet. You may not see a clear sign that points directly to action. But you will feel a growing sense that something is settling into place, as if a question is slowly answering itself without words. During this phase, you might notice that your own emotional reactions become softer. Things that once triggered strong responses don't hit the same way anymore. You're less reactive, more observant. This isn't emotional numbness. It's emotional clarity. When someone's attention is consistently directed toward you with sincerity, it creates a stabilizing effect rather than a chaotic one. Your nervous system senses that something is aligning rather than threatening. You may also notice that your curiosity about this person changes. Instead of wondering why they did certain things in the past, you start understanding them. The need for answers turns into acceptance. This shift doesn't happen because you've decided to move on or let go. It happens because the energetic exchange between you has matured. When someone thinks about you deeply, especially with reflection and honesty, the emotional tone of the connection changes on both sides. At this point, many people expect something dramatic to happen. A sudden message. A confession. A confrontation. But real alignment rarely shows up that way. Instead, it feels almost anticlimactic. Calm replaces anticipation. Certainty replaces confusion. You're no longer searching for signs because you don't feel lost anymore. That's one of the strongest indicators that something real is happening beneath the surface. Another subtle sign during this stage is how your body responds when you think of them. There's no tightness. No rush. Just a neutral awareness, sometimes even warmth. The body often processes truth before the mind does. When someone is thinking about you from a grounded place rather than an anxious one, your body responds with ease instead of tension. This is an important distinction. You may also notice a shift in your sense of time. Days feel fuller but not rushed. Moments slow down slightly. This happens because your attention is no longer fragmented. You're more present. Presence is often the result of emotional alignment. When your inner world isn't pulling you in multiple directions, time feels different. Meanwhile, the person thinking about you is likely experiencing their own internal quieting. Their thoughts are becoming more focused. They're less interested in distraction and more interested in meaning. When they think about you now, it's not accompanied by anxiety or fantasy. It's grounded in reality. In understanding. In recognition. This is also the stage where intention begins to form. Not action yet, but clarity around intention. They may start asking themselves what they actually want rather than what feels comfortable. They may begin questioning patterns they've repeated in the past. And because you're part of that reflection, you feel the shift too. You might notice that your intuition becomes more accurate during this time. You sense things before they happen. Not in dramatic ways, but in small, confirming moments. You think of something and it appears. You feel drawn to pause, and later realize why. This heightened intuition often accompanies situations where energy is aligning behind the scenes. Another sign that often appears now is emotional neutrality toward outcomes. You care, but you're not attached to a specific result. This doesn't mean you've lost interest. It means you trust yourself enough to handle whatever comes. Emotional neutrality is often misunderstood, but it's actually a sign of strength. It allows truth to arrive without distortion. You may also notice that conversations with others feel different. You're less interested in explaining yourself. Less interested in being understood by everyone. This is because your inner validation has strengthened. When someone is thinking about you with sincerity, it reinforces your sense of self rather than challenging it. At this point, silence between you and them no longer feels uncomfortable. It feels purposeful. Like space that's being used rather than wasted. This is one of the clearest indicators that something is aligning rather than fading. Silence that feels heavy is different from silence that feels intentional. What you're experiencing now belongs to the second kind. You might still have moments of doubt. That's natural. Doubt doesn't negate awareness. It simply shows that your mind is adjusting to a new understanding. Let doubt pass without letting it define the experience. Awareness doesn't require certainty to exist. It's also important to understand that not all connections are meant to move at the same speed. Some require time to recalibrate so they don't repeat old patterns. If this connection matters, the universe will prioritize stability over urgency. And stability often feels quiet. During this stage, you may feel drawn to simplify your life in small ways. Clearing space. Letting go of unnecessary distractions. Choosing rest over stimulation. This isn't random. It's alignment. When something meaningful is preparing to enter or re-enter your life, your system creates room for it naturally. The person thinking about you is likely experiencing something similar. A need for clarity. A desire to approach things differently. A recognition that whatever happens next needs to be intentional, not reactive. This is where many connections either deepen or dissolve. And the determining factor isn't action. It's awareness. If both people reach this stage with openness rather than fear, the connection has room to evolve. You don't need to monitor this process. You don't need to analyze every feeling. Simply staying present is enough. Awareness does the work on its own. If communication happens, it will come from this place of clarity. And if it doesn't happen immediately, that doesn't mean the awareness wasn't real. Some realizations take time to turn into words. What matters is that you are no longer guessing blindly. You are noticing. Feeling. Understanding. Someone is thinking about you more than you realize, and that attention has already changed the way this connection exists. Let that be enough for now. As this connection continues to unfold quietly, you may start to realize that the signs are no longer just appearing around you, they're shaping how you see yourself and the situation altogether. This is the phase where awareness turns into understanding. Not the kind that demands answers right away, but the kind that settles into you slowly and changes your perspective without effort. When someone is thinking about you more than you realize, the connection begins to influence your inner stability, not your anxiety. You might notice that you're no longer searching for reassurance the way you once did. The urge to check, to confirm, to interpret every small thing starts to fade. In its place comes a sense of trust. Not necessarily trust in the other person yet, but trust in your own perception. You begin to recognize the difference between imagined connections and real ones. Real ones don't make you feel restless. They make you feel grounded. During this stage, your intuition becomes quieter but clearer. Instead of constant signals, you receive fewer, stronger impressions. When you think of them now, it doesn't spiral into questions. It simply exists. This neutrality is important. It shows that the connection has moved out of emotional turbulence and into emotional truth. When someone is thinking about you with clarity rather than confusion, the energy they send feels clean, not chaotic. You may also notice that your sense of self becomes stronger. You're less affected by outside opinions. Less pulled by comparisons. Less influenced by distractions. This happens because attention directed at you with sincerity reinforces your sense of value on a subtle level. Not in an ego-driven way, but in a stabilizing one. It's as if something is quietly reminding you of who you are without needing to say it. Another shift that often occurs here is a change in how you relate to the past. Memories involving this person may resurface, but without the emotional charge they once carried. Instead of regret or confusion, there's understanding. You see things more clearly. You recognize why certain moments happened the way they did. This clarity isn't forced. It arrives naturally when both sides are reflecting rather than reacting. At the same time, the person thinking about you is likely going through a similar process. They're no longer stuck replaying the same emotions. They're seeing the connection from a wider perspective. This is where respect begins to replace projection. They start recognizing you as a whole person rather than an idea shaped by past emotion. That shift matters more than most people realize. You might feel less urgency to define what this connection is or where it's going. Labels feel unnecessary. Outcomes feel less important. This doesn't mean the connection is fading. It means it's maturing. When something is real, it doesn't need constant validation to exist. It simply is. During this phase, signs often appear in subtler forms. Not dramatic coincidences, but quiet confirmations. You think of something and later understand why. You feel drawn to pause, and later realize that pause mattered. These moments don't demand interpretation. They simply reassure you that awareness is aligned on both sides. You may also notice that your emotional boundaries feel clearer. You're no longer overextending or withdrawing. You're present, but protected. This balance is essential. It allows connection without self-sacrifice. And it's often the point where meaningful communication becomes possible, because neither side is operating from fear or lack. Another important sign at this stage is the absence of pressure. You don't feel pushed to act, and you don't feel stuck waiting. You're simply living your life with a quiet awareness in the background. That awareness doesn't interrupt your peace. It supports it. This is one of the strongest indicators that the attention being directed toward you is sincere and grounded. The universe often allows this phase to last longer than expected because it's where lasting connections are decided. Not through words or promises, but through inner alignment. If both people reach this stage without forcing action, the connection has room to evolve naturally. You might also feel a sense of emotional readiness, even if you don't know what you're ready for. This readiness isn't about expectation. It's about capacity. You feel capable of handling clarity, whatever form it takes. That's a sign of growth. The person thinking about you may begin to feel the same readiness. Not to rush in, but to approach with intention. They may still be quiet, but the quality of their thoughts has changed. They're no longer circling doubt. They're considering honesty. It's important to understand that silence during this stage is not avoidance. It's processing. Realizations take time to translate into words. Especially when those realizations involve vulnerability. What matters is not how quickly someone speaks, but how clearly they do when they're ready. You don't need to monitor this process or try to influence it. Awareness is already doing the work. When two people are thinking about each other from a place of clarity, the connection aligns on its own timeline. This is also the stage where many people realize they've outgrown old patterns. You're no longer drawn to uncertainty for excitement. You value calm over chaos. Depth over intensity. This shift ensures that whatever happens next won't repeat what didn't work before. If communication happens soon, it will come from this grounded place. And if it takes more time, that time is being used to strengthen understanding, not delay it. Either way, the awareness you feel now is real. Someone is thinking about you more than you realize, and that attention has already influenced how this connection exists. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But steadily, quietly, and with purpose. Let that awareness continue to settle without forcing meaning onto it. Sometimes the most powerful connections speak in calm rather than noise. As everything you've been sensing reaches its final stage, it's important to understand that awareness always comes before resolution. This is the point where all the quiet signs, the subtle shifts, and the internal changes finally come together into one clear understanding. When someone has been thinking about you more than you realize, the purpose isn't to keep you guessing forever. The purpose is to bring both people to a place where clarity can exist without fear. By now, you may notice that the connection no longer feels confusing. Even if nothing has been said out loud, there's a sense of completion forming internally. Not an ending, but a settling. The questions that once felt heavy don't carry the same weight. You're no longer searching for proof because you don't feel lost anymore. This is what alignment feels like. Quiet certainty instead of emotional noise. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have is believing that if someone is thinking about you deeply, it must always lead to immediate action. That's not true. Sometimes the purpose of thinking is understanding. Sometimes it's healing. And sometimes it's preparing both people for a conversation or outcome that can only happen when the emotional ground is stable. At this stage, you may feel a sense of emotional closure even without contact. Closure doesn't always come from answers. It comes from acceptance. Acceptance of what was, what is, and what may or may not come next. This doesn't mean the connection disappears. It means it no longer controls you. And that's powerful. If communication is meant to happen, it will come from this place of balance. Not from urgency. Not from fear of loss. But from clarity. When someone thinks about you from that place, their desire to speak is guided by honesty rather than impulse. And honesty moves more slowly, but it lasts longer. You might also realize that this experience has changed you. You're more self-aware. More grounded. Less reactive. That growth didn't happen by accident. It happened because the connection required you to become more emotionally present. Sometimes the real purpose of someone thinking about you deeply is not just to reconnect, but to help both people grow into stronger versions of themselves. It's also possible that the awareness you felt was meant to give you peace rather than action. Not every connection is meant to be continued in the same form. Some are meant to be understood, honored, and released without resentment. And that release doesn't feel like loss. It feels like relief. What matters most is how you feel now. If you feel calm, steady, and clear, that's your answer. Real connections don't leave you anxious. They don't leave you chasing meaning. They settle into your life naturally or step aside gently when their role is complete. If you do hear from them, you'll notice the difference immediately. The energy will feel grounded. The words will feel intentional. There won't be confusion or mixed signals. You'll know that whatever is being said comes from reflection, not impulse. And if you don't hear from them, that doesn't mean the connection wasn't real. It means the awareness served its purpose. It brought understanding where there was once uncertainty. And sometimes, that understanding is the most valuable outcome of all. You don't need to replay signs or analyze every moment anymore. You've already received what you needed. Awareness has done its work. From here, whatever unfolds will do so naturally, without forcing, without pressure. Trust that your intuition guided you correctly. Trust that what you felt wasn't imagined. And trust that connections that matter leave you stronger, not weaker, regardless of the outcome. As you move forward, carry this understanding with you. It will help you recognize real connections faster, trust your awareness sooner, and protect your peace more confidently. If this series helped you see things more clearly or brought you a sense of calm, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you don't miss future messages like this. Sometimes the right words at the right time are all it takes to bring clarity.